Forget the glittering armor and damsels in distress you've seen in Hollywood. Prepare to step into a Middle Ages you never knew existed. A world where dating, as we understand it, was a concept as foreign as a smartphone, yet where love, passion, and bewildering social rituals determined life itself. This is a true historical journey spanning centuries across the damped, smoky hearths of peasant cottages and the chilly, tapestried halls of castles, revealing astonishing facts about romance, marriage, and the bizarre, beautiful, and sometimes brutal reality of finding a partner in medieval Europe. The illusion of courtship, when marriage was a merger. In the grand sweep of the Middle Ages, roughly 5th to 15th centuries, one overwhelming truth defined romantic relations. Marriage was almost never about love. It was about alliance. Whether you were a high-born lady or a humble farmer, your union was a pragmatic, often ruthless, economic or political merger orchestrated by family patriarchs. The noble game of alliances. For the aristocracy, the search for a spouse was less a date and more a geopolitical negotiation. Imagine the highest stakes deal of your life being finalized by your parents, with you as the collateral. The child bride and groom. It wasn't uncommon for marriages to be arranged in childhood, securing a political or land-based alliance decades in advance. While the church set the minimum age for consent at 12 for girls and 14 for boys, the legal marriage contract could be written much earlier. The goal was to secure a legitimate heir, ensuring the continuation of the family line and the consolidation of property. The courtship that wasn't. A noble couple often did not meet until after the marriage was officially agreed upon, or perhaps not even until the day of the wedding itself. Their courtship was the exchange of detailed letters and portraits, often highly embellished, a medieval form of catfishing, all heavily supervised by chaperones and family. Any private moment was strictly forbidden, as a noblewoman's virginity was paramount. It guaranteed the legitimacy of the children who would inherit everything. The dower and the dowry. The negotiations were obsessed with money. The bride's family brought a dowry, a transfer of property or money to the groom's family, and in exchange, the groom promised a dower, a portion of his property set aside to support his wife if he died. It was a financial transaction, and if the bride's father was wealthy enough, her personal qualities were often irrelevant. The marriage might be loveless, but it was financially secure. The bedding ceremony. One of the most astonishing and shocking to modern sensibilities, noble customs was the bedding the bride ceremony. After the wedding feast, the entire wedding party would escort the couple to their bedchamber. Friends and family would help the bride and groom undress and physically put them into bed, often making bawdy jokes and offering toasts. A priest or bishop might then bless the marital bed. This public display was not just a ribald tradition, it was a societal and legal affirmation that the marriage had commenced, with witnesses confirming the couple had been left alone to fulfill their primary duty, consummation and the creation of legitimate heirs. The commoner's freedom and necessity. Life was different for the common folk, the peasants, artisans, and merchants, though no less dictated by necessity. They had more personal agency, but their choices were constrained by the hard realities of survival. Dating in the fields. Peasants were usually married later than nobles, often in their late teens or early 20s, simply because they needed to be fully capable workers to support a household. Dating, for them, was courtship conducted in the open, while working the fields, at the village well, or during public festivals, kermesses. There were no private dates. Everyone in the village was a chaperone. Simple gifts and public flirting. A peasant man would signal his intent with simple, practical gifts, perhaps a piece of fruit, a home-baked gingerbread, or an item of clothing.
Flirtation was direct and public. If a woman was interested, she might accept the gift or engage in the open banter. The ultimate deal breaker. For commoners, unlike nobles, premarital sex was tolerated with surprising regularity, provided it led to marriage. The main deal breaker, or rather the deal closer, was pregnancy. Once the woman was pregnant, the couple was expected to marry immediately. This demonstrated the couple's fertility and ensured the child was born into a legally recognized union, a practical necessity in a world where family labor was crucial for survival. A knot tied with consent. The most legally astounding fact about commoner marriage was this: until the 16th century, a marriage did not strictly require a church ceremony or a priest to be legally binding. All that was needed was the mutual consent of the two individuals. If a man and woman exchanged verbal vows using words of present consent, "I take you as my wife now," even in a pub, on the road, or in bed, the marriage was legally valid. If an engaged couple had sexual intercourse, it was often seen as an unwritten expression of present consent, instantly creating a legally binding marriage. The church fought this clandestine marriage tradition for centuries, finally succeeding in making public, witnessed church weddings mandatory much later. Part 2. The astonishing world of courtly love. Amid the harsh realities of arranged and pragmatic marriages, a fantastical, often illicit, and completely non-marital code of conduct emerged among the elite in the 12th century: courtly love. This code, celebrated by troubadours and chronicled in epic literature, created an emotional escape hatch from the loveless reality of noble marriage. The rules of the game. Courtly love was a refined, secret, and highly formalized relationship where a knight or nobleman would devote himself to a beautiful, intelligent, and almost universally married noble woman, often his lord's wife. The object of affection. The love was typically non-sexual and intensely idealized. The lady was put on a pedestal, treated as a near religious figure worthy of absolute devotion, but not physical possession. The code of conduct. The knight's love for the lady was meant to make him a better person. He would perform acts of valor, win tournaments, compose poetry, and go on crusades, all in her name and for her honor. He might wear her colors in a tournament: blue for fidelity, green for unfaithfulness. The incompatibility with marriage. The core rule, famously stated in the 12th century text, The Art of Courtly Love by Andreas Capellanos, was true love can have no place between husband and wife. Because marriage was a social and economic arrangement, it was believed to be too pragmatic for the pure, elevating pain of true love. The lady was already married, and the tension of that unattainability is what fueled the entire glorious exercise. The troubadours and the scandals. The troubadours, poet-musicians from regions like Aquitaine and Provence, were the rock stars of the age, singing ballads of this idealized, secret devotion. This literary tradition gave rise to legends like King Arthur and his knight Lancelot, whose adulterous love for Queen Guinevere perfectly encapsulates the tension between duty, marriage, and passionate devotion.
A bizarre courtship ritual. To further win his lady's favor, a knight might present her with the ultimate trophy: a piece of his bloodied clothing from a tournament, a lock of hair from an enemy he vanquished, or the magnificent pelt of a bear he hunted. These weren't exactly a dozen roses. The pursuit of a partner was filled with customs that defy modern logic, mixing superstition, practicality, and a deeply ingrained religious fatalism. The sweaty apple trick. In England up to the Elizabethan era, perhaps the strangest courtship ritual involved a woman placing a peeled apple in her armpit or between her breasts until it was thoroughly soaked with her sweat. She would then offer this scented, glistening fruit to the man she desired. If the man ate the apple,
It was believed to expose him to her very essence, binding him to her. This ritual highlights an astonishing openness to using powerful, if not as unappetizing, personal scents in the pursuit of love. The prophecy of the wedding ring. The exchange of rings, a common custom today, dates back to the Middle Ages. The ring was placed on the fourth finger of the left hand because it was believed that a vein, vena amoris, ran directly from that finger to the heart. Moreover, a ring made of rushes or reeds was sometimes used in a secret mock wedding by a man to entice a woman into a quick sexual relationship. The church specifically condemned this practice, warning that the joke ring was legally binding if consent was given, burdening the man with a wife he did not intend to keep. Choosing your Valentine. February feasts. While we associate Valentine's Day with cards and chocolate, its medieval precursor involved lotteries. At midwinter feasts, especially in France and England, single young men and women would draw names to choose a sweetheart or valentine for the upcoming year. This person was not necessarily a true love interest, but a companion for the year's festivals with a social expectation of gift-giving and mutual devotion. It was a formal, yet often temporary, assignment of romance. The colors of the wedding dress. A white wedding dress was virtually unheard of. White was often seen as the color of mourning. Noble brides chose gowns of rich jewel tones, red, gold, and blue, made from expensive fabrics like silk and velvet. Blue was a particularly popular choice, as it symbolized purity, fidelity, and the Virgin Mary. A bride's dress was so prized as a good luck charm that after the wedding feast, guests would sometimes chase the bride to try and tear off a piece of her gown for luck. The cake stack challenge. Forget the modern tiered cake. At medieval weddings, guests would bring small buns and stack them as high as possible. The bride and groom were then required to attempt to kiss over the top of the towering mound of bread without knocking it over. Success was a sign of a prosperous marriage. It is this custom more than any other that is credited by historians as the direct ancestor of the tiered wedding cake we know today. Epilogue. The legacy of medieval love. The medieval story of finding a partner is one of profound contradiction. It was an age where the greatest passion was supposedly reserved for someone you couldn't marry, and the greatest commitment was for someone you didn't love. It was a world where a legal marriage could be sealed by saying 5 words in a tavern, or by simply having sex after an engagement, yet where a noble woman's every glance was monitored. The sheer practicality of survival, the intense pressure of familial duty, and the rigid class structures dictated almost everything. Yet the ideals of courtly love endured, injecting the poison of romance into the iron fist of social necessity. When you see a couple today exchanging vows of personal love and fidelity, know that this very concept, the idea of marrying for love, is an astonishingly modern invention, one that had to fight its way out of the pragmatic, arranged, and utterly bizarre landscape of the Middle Ages. The foundations of your romantic life were forged in a world where a man might die in a joust for a lady he couldn't touch, and a woman might marry a stranger for land and gold. The path to your wedding aisle was paved with bloody lances, sweaty apples, and mountains of wheat buns.